Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Beyond Haunted Vermont. My name is Paul Doski, and joining me is a special guest, which I should have recognized his name from an old book that had been in my family forever. And, well, let's just say, after even doing some digging, I found his name again back on the Haunted Vermont page and stuff. And next thing I know, he's putting out he has a book out right now, and he's about to have a documentary come out from Small Town Monster, because they went and basically picked his brain, not only his brain, but his family in general. And I mean, it's I'll just say this and we can go from there. But Bruce Hallenbeck's family is the guest, by the way. But I just want to say this real quick, and then Bruce, the honor is all mine. But so Small Town Monsters, Kinderhook Creature documentary. I'll just say documentary for lack of term here, but I mean, I think it's more than just a documentary. It's like a family story and town and just historical stuff all in one, really. But what I want to say real quick is this might be my favorite documentary Small Town Monster project yet, just because of the meaning behind it and everything. And I'm saying that from the heart, Bruce, because I mean, I completely felt every emotion in it and everything. And I don't want you to get teary-eyed either, but I mean, I just, it got to a one part, and you know what part it was when you had to take a second. And I was just like, oh God, I feel that. Like, I feel that because, before I hit the recording, I was talking about my dad who passed away. So I completely feel this and stuff. So Bruce Hallenbeck, it's an honor to have you on to chat tonight.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm really glad you liked, I call it a documentary. I saw it myself just recently, and I just thought Seth did an amazing job with it. I mean, it is kind of more than a documentary in a way, because it does have an emotional impact, and it tells a real story, a family story. And, it's kind of like a family drama with paranormal stuff and cryptozoological stuff dropped in, which is pretty much my life story, I guess. But I just thought he did an amazing job, and I was so happy with it. And I told him so.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, I love it too, because you go into the town of Kinderhook and the rich history, because Sleepy Hollow basically and everything else. But like, we got, the 8th president there, and just all the bizarre stuff that even happened around the area, not just at your place, but I would just say the area in general. If that fair? Because
I've lived in Kinderhook most of my life. I've moved out a couple of times, but I always seem to come back. And in fact, I'm living in the house where I grew up, or as some people might say, where I failed to grow up. But whatever. By the way, this is my cat Cricket here. She will not leave my side, so we're stuck with her. But Kinderhook has always been a kind of mystical town, because Washington Irving spent a lot of time here, and he actually wrote a lot of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow here in Kinderhook. And basically what he did with that story is he based the characters on people who live in Kinderhook, who lived there then. Jesse Merwin, a school teacher, became Ichabod Crane. Katrina Van Allen became Katrina Van Tassel. And Abraham Van Alstyne became Brom Bones. So all those characters are based on real people, but he put them in the Tarrytown setting. So both towns over the years have claimed the legend of Sleepy Hollow. For example, I went to Ichabod Crane Central School, and our mascot was the headless horseman. So,
awesome.
So I've always lived in this kind of atmosphere, and I've always been interested in strange things. And I've written a number of books, not just on the paranormal and cryptozoology, but also on classic horror films. And I've made several films myself. So I've kind of dabbled in a lot of different things, but I'm always drawn to the paranormal and to cryptozoology because I've had so many experiences I can't explain. And when that happens, you become a person on a mission. And I guess I've been on that mission most of my life.
When you say most of your life, do you mean like give us a rough example? Like how old were you when you maybe first step foot into the phenomenon? I guess would be a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think as far as I can remember, I read a book in the sixth grade. It was in our sixth grade school library called The Maybe Monsters by Gardner Soule. It's probably a long forgotten book, but it was, it was aimed at younger readers. And it was a book about, all the usual suspects, the Loch Ness Monster, the Abominable Snowman, Sasquatch, all those things. And I just became fascinated by it. And so, I think it really started with that. Although a year before that, I think, or a couple of years before that, I had my first kind of strange experience with something that we came to call the blob. And that's a phenomenon that's taken on a life of its own. There are a number of Kinderhook Blob blogs on the internet, which I don't know who's behind them, but somebody read about them in a couple of my previous books, I guess. And there are these blogs all over the place now, and websites, and I've seen a couple of short films about the Kinderhook Blob that somebody made. I don't know. But in any case, the blob was something that I first saw when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, and my cousin Sherry and I were playing up at the top of the hill behind my grandparents' house, and it was just before sunset, and all of a sudden I heard a strange whistling, high-pitched whistling sound from behind me, and I turned around to see what was making it, and I saw this white kind of amorphous round shape seemed to be looking at me from behind a tree. I couldn't see any eyes, but I felt it was looking at me, and it was kind of like bluish white. And being 9 or 10 years old, I said to my cousin, "Let's get out of here." So we ran out of the woods. But that was the first of several sightings that friends of mine had, relatives, and even my father saw something like it later on.
Right.
And what it is, I have no idea.
So it's not like a it's not like a creature or something. It's like would you say it's like I don't know, like a spook light per se, or like some sort of blurry thing? Like how would you kind of describe it to somebody that might not know?
What's fascinating to me is that different people interpret it differently. Mm-hmm. Now, a couple of years after that first sighting, my boyhood friend Jerome was down in the woods by himself, and I had come up to the house for whatever reason. And this was during the day, and as I was coming out the door to go back down to see him, he ran up to the porch, and his face was as white as a sheet. And he said, "I just saw something down in the woods." He said, "It was like a big blob. It was coming down the hill." And I was so scared that I jumped over the pond. And the pond in the woods was about 6 feet wide. So he must have been really scared. So at first I thought he was pulling my leg. But then I realized, he was genuinely frightened of something. So, we're like 12 years old. So I said, "Okay, let's go down and find this thing." And I grabbed a pitchfork And I think he grabbed a shovel or something, and we went down. We were going to find this thing. And so we're walking along through the woods, and all of a sudden, Jerome stopped and pointed straight ahead and said, "Look up there." And I looked up in the tree, and there was this white shape up in the tree, this kind of white, amorphous shape. And being 12 years old, we had no courage. So we just dropped our weapons, and I said, "Let's get out of here," again. And we ran. So we didn't find out what it was that day, obviously. But fast forward about 14 years now after that, and two of my cousins had built a lean-to down in the woods around the same area. This is behind my grandparents' house again. And they were there one day, one afternoon. It was in the early fall, just hanging out. And all of a sudden, they saw something. They heard something first, rustling of leaves, and something was coming down the hill. Now, my cousin Barry, who is Protestant, and this is important to point out, saw a bell-shaped thing coming down the hill. But my cousin Russell, who is Catholic, saw the Virgin Mary coming down the hill. And I think they both took off and ran too. And they actually drew me what they had seen later on, drew me pictures of what they'd seen. And my cousin Barry drew a bell-shaped object. And my cousin Russell drew something that looked more like a woman, a Virgin Mary. So what that means, I don't know. They both saw something, obviously, but it seems like whatever it is colored by their preconceptions or their beliefs. I find that fascinating. Yeah.
Very, yeah. Yeah, when I heard about that in the documentary too, it was just like I was kind of almost wondering. The kind of thing, kind of gave me ideas of like a shape shifter in a way, but it's almost like how you just put it. Depending on how you look at reality, that's what it goes by, which is very coincidence, maybe. I don't know. Like it's very odd that
Yeah.
it can do that, though. At the same time, that
Well, it seems like it has an effect on your perception of it, on your mind. Now, my father saw something like it years later. He was out on his tractor in the field, and he said he saw this white shape fly over his head, and it kind of flew toward the woods and disappeared. And then there was another sighting in 2017, I think is the most recent that I've heard of. And I haven't been able to reach these people to confirm it because I don't know, it's kind of bathed in mystery and it may not be legitimate. But what they said was, and this is on the internet somewhere, that they were walking through the woods around Kinderhook. They heard a whistling sound like I did, and this white shape flew over their heads. So the whistling sound interests me. I've read in some books about the paranormal that that's a very common thing to hear when you have a paranormal experience, is like a high-pitched whistle. And some people have suggested that maybe that's something breaking through from another dimension into our reality, if that makes any sense. Maybe that's the sound it makes. I don't know. I say in the book that I don't have any, real preconceived notions about what these things are. I've just experienced some things that I can't explain. And that's what makes it so interesting to me, is that I can't explain them. And that's why I want to learn more about them.
Yeah, that reminds me of a long time. This would have been 2006, 2007, I think. I was like in a metal band thing, and we went to like an abandoned church, and did it before I even did like the whole paranormal thing. But we were at the abandoned church one night, and we heard this female scream, like somebody was getting murdered. So we didn't think anything of it because we obviously knew like animals can make that sound, certain ones can and stuff like that. Um, but if you, but I've been back to the same, uh, I've been back to the same abandoned church like 5 more times prior, and each time either you're gonna get no weird feelings or you're gonna get a feeling where you want to get out of there, almost like you feel sick to your stomach or something. It's really weird in this location. So I don't know, it's just maybe something around because it is by like some old foundation, like up on this weird hill, and it's also near a swamp, and just where it is, it's just weird nonetheless.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think also animals are very sensitive to these things, and they seem to know when something strange is around. When I first moved back into this house after my grandmother passed away, I got a cat, and I hadn't had a cat before, so this cat was just exploring the house, and it went straight to the stairs, and got to the landing, and looked straight up, and started yowling for no particular reason that I could see, and just kept it up for quite a while. And I couldn't help but think, maybe he sensed my grandmother's spirit because her room was up there, and who knows? I mean, but I do think animals are very sensitive to these things.
Oh yeah,
including this cat right here. Wow.
Yeah. The cat.
If you won't leave me alone, help.
The cat acts like a parrot.
Yeah.
Well, cats are like our guardians at night, our protectors. That's why sometimes, like at night, there'll be what's the theory? Like they sweep by our bed to basically protect us, and then the reason why they sometimes roam around at night is to basically just make sure there's nothing unwanted in our house, kind of thing, before coming back.
Could be. I wouldn't put it past them. Let's put it that way.
No,
we also have a dog. And something interesting happened with him. Actually, not directly with him, but about him a couple of months ago. My wife and I were watching TV one evening, and he has a dog bed that is it's up on legs. It's like it's almost like a little trampoline kind of thing is what it looks like. And sometimes he keeps his toys under there. Well, we were watching TV, and the dog was up near us, and all of a sudden one of his balls shot out, a little ball that he had, shot out from underneath his bed and came right over to the ottoman where I had my feet up. And I looked at my wife and I said, "Did you see that?" It was like somebody just threw it from under the bed. That was the most recent weird thing that's happened here. It's one of the reasons I like living here is because, and I've lived in this house most of my life. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, there have been so many strange things that have happened here that it's never boring,
I like your attitude for that, Bruce. Yeah, I was just sharing a couple of my experiences with Shannon McGrow for her podcast, and one of the very first weird moments I remember when I was young is I couldn't find a doorknob for my bedroom, and every kid at the time should know your way out of your bedroom. Well, it's one particular night where it's so dark you can't even see your hand in front of your face, and I can't find the doorknob. I'm feeling around, going up and down, left, right, just trying to feel. My closet is literally a few feet from me because it was like one of those bedrooms where you walk in to your bedroom, and then to your left, like I'm trying to put it as perspective, as in you just walked into the bedroom. Even for you, Bruce, and for the listener, just in case they may not have heard of this one. But as soon as you walk into my old bedroom, you look to your immediate left. There's my closet. If you look straight ahead, that's basically where my one and only window was. As you go a little bit to the right, that is where my dresser would be. And in the middle of this room is where my bed was. And lastly, if you were to go straight to where the window was, but look to your immediate right from there, so basically on the opposite side of my bed, I had one of those old fashioned school desks that basically you lift up on the top, which, schools don't have those anymore. So
Yeah.
they're missing out though. But yeah, that was my old bedroom. But you would think though, from as close as I just kind of described, from like my closet to my bedroom door, I should have been able to find it no problem, especially since I had a window. A window, but it was so dark I still couldn't even find it. But the weird thing about this is, like, I'm trying to bang on whatever I'm banging on, whether it be what I thought was either the door or maybe a little bit of the wall, because you got that little space in between your door for the bedroom and the wall, as it kind of does the dividing right before the closet again, because that, like I said, that's how close you were. That's how close you were. But who knows how long this went on for. And next thing I know, my mom opened the door on the opposite side, almost like she finally broke whatever was going on. And she's just like, "What are you doing, banging on the wall or door this time of night?" And I'm like, "I couldn't find the doorknob." And I recently just asked her about this, and she's like, "Why are you bringing this up?" And all I remember is like it was a power outage, no big deal. And I'm just like, "Well, I remember because a kid should remember the door." Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. But real quick, Bruce, another thing that I just want to, I know this is like farther into the documentary, but one other story that you had really caught my attention too, because I've had something similar, which is the red light. Now, I know you kind of described it. It was bright. It was up on your second floor. And I think you were seeing this from the outside.
Right.
And as you went in and up the stairs, you couldn't really find the corporate of the red light per se. Where, like in my case, I was at the battlefield here. I don't know how familiar you are with Vermont, but it's the Hubbardton battlefield. They have the little building there. I don't even know a good term right now, but like a gift shop, I'll just say, for lack of. And anyway, inside this gift shop, there was this red light, but it got brighter. It was almost as if it was trying to come closer to the door, and it was so weird because my friend thought it was the exit sign, and I said, "There's no way it's the exit sign," because this thing got so bright that even as we were walking back to our cars, like, that's when we realized it looked like it was almost trying to come out of the building toward the parking lot. It was the most weirdest situation ever.
Huh. It is strange. Yeah. Well, the color red seems to have some significance. There was a person I knew at the time, and I truly can't remember his name now, but he was kind of a ghost hunter. And when I told him that story about the red light, he said, "Well, that red is usually the color of anger or, deep emotion."
Yep.
And the interesting thing to me about that was that my wife and I had just had a fight, an argument in my grandmother's old room. And that's where the red light was coming from that I saw from the yard. Um, she got mad at me and she took off in the car, and I went down to the yard and sat at our picnic table, and I happened to look up at the house, and I saw this red light in my grandmother's old room that lit up the whole room. I mean, you could see everything in the room. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, there's no red light up there. And I tried to rationalize it. I tried to say, well, could it be car lights reflecting off the window? But no, because number one, it was summertime, and the windows had screens in them, not glass. And number two, they couldn't reflect off the second floor. So I just kept looking at the window, and all of a sudden, it kind of flickered, and the red light went out. And that's when I got creeped out, because I thought that ain't right, you know. So it took me a while to get up the nerve to come back into the house. And when I did, I walked up the stairs slowly and went into my grandmother's room. And of course, there was no red light in there. There was nothing like that. So what I saw that lit up the whole room, I don't know, but I think it had something to do with my grandmother. You know, it was very, very strange, and it kind of unsettled me. Let's put it that way. And yet,
Right.
and yet, I always feel that, you know, in a sense, my grandmother is still here. My wife thought she saw her when she first moved in. She saw this little old lady come out of my grandmother's old bedroom. She even described her apron, and it was a description of one of her favorite aprons. So, you know, and she's very skeptical. She's not one to believe in things like that. But she had to admit that was a strange experience. So, you know, she also felt, though, when she first moved in, that there was a real warmth to this house. And I said, well, that would be my grandmother, you know. She was a very warm person. So
That sounds like her Aurora really put a do I want to say like a stamp on the house? Maybe that might
yeah,
be yeah.
yeah. No, I think yeah. You can still feel her here in many ways. And the interesting thing to me is that when she was here, she and I together had many strange experiences. You know, poltergeist activity. We saw UFOs, all kinds of things, and of course the Kinderhook Creature, which was the big thing. But
Mm,
and since she's been gone, some of the experiences that I've had have been about her or related to her. So it's almost like that, you know, that the two of us together somehow called these things to happen. You know, I don't. Again, I don't really have any particular theory, but it just seems odd to me that so many things happened to the two of us, and that
right.
she's still here in some fashion. I think.
Yeah, probably just watching over your house, basically your guys' house, because it was all of
Yeah.
your home.
Yeah.
And I just think also because I mean, if you don't mind me asking, Bruce, how old were you when your grandma passed away? Because I also know, even from the documentary and your book, like it shows how much your grandmother was basically your mom. But we don't
Yeah.
have to go into that because I know it's very personal, and you know they touch on it in the documentary. But I guess what
Mhm.
I'm trying to get at here is like, you know, because one of my questions I was wondering is, depending on how old you were when she passed, did you ever get a chance at all to really sit down and talk with each other to kind of be like, huh, you know? And you kind of mentioned it too, where when you two were together, it was like this grand, grand theatre, as I can say that, of activity. And then it sounded like now that she's gone, I want to say you said it kind of like lessened a little bit, right?
It seems that way. Yeah. Well, I was 40 when she passed away, so I was no little kid or anything. But yeah, it seems that way to me. I mean, there have been a few things that have happened since she passed away, like the red light, and my wife seeing her. And there have been a couple of other minor things, but nothing as dramatic as seeing. Together, we watched UFOs. This was back in
Mm-hmm.
the '70s, early '70s. We saw UFOs from our house that looked like they were over the Catskill Mountains, and they were just zipping around the sky and doing crazy things. And there was the time that her coleus plant disappeared. I don't know if you've read that in the book yet, but
I haven't gotten to that part
that
yet.
was pretty strange. I was walking out into the kitchen, and my grandmother had a coleus plant, with one of her favorite plants, that was sitting on a table in the dining room, and the house is pretty open, so there wasn't any door between where she was sitting in the living room and the dining room. And as I was walking out into the kitchen, she saw the plant, the pot, kind of go up and down, across and down, straight down. And I heard a crash. So when I came back into the dining room, I saw the pot standing up on, as it should be but it was on the floor, but it was standing straight up, and there was no plant in it. The coleus plant was gone, and we never found it. And I can't explain that. I don't think Sherlock Holmes could explain that. It's just absolutely weird. And there was another time we were sitting at the dinner table, and just having dinner and chatting, and this dish of corn suddenly moved across the table and stopped at the very edge of the table. And we looked at each other and went like, "Well, that happened." And we just kind of laughed about it. I mean, we got to a point where we just kind of chuckled about these things.
Yep.
Because what else are you going to do?
Exactly. Yeah, the poltergeist activity brings me back to when I was in the fourth grade, and my friend was in the third grade, and he was on a farmhouse, but every time I would go there after my first experience there, it was almost like, kind of like how you described it too, Bruce. It's like, well, what's going to happen today?
Yeah.
So there was a funny joke going on between me and him, where us kids being young and stupid and messy, we would almost like just take off our shoes and socks, and we didn't care where they landed. We were just dumb kids, and we didn't really pick up after ourselves unless we really had to or something, or we brought down our dinner plate or something, because his parents were working on the farm, obviously, so they had weird sleeping hours, from what I recall, because they were like working during the night and they were kind of sleeping in the afternoon, kind of thing. But one of the stuff I'll never forget is, like, one day we wanted to test this theory out, which is basically trash as much as we could of his bedroom, and then go outside for the day while his folks slept, because we figured his parents aren't going to know that we trashed the place, because they're going to be coming back in to, from their farm work and going to bed. So we basically knew, like, how their schedule went. So that's what we did. We trashed his place as best as we could and went outside for the day. And when we came back in, all the stuff that was on the floor or wherever it landed, all picked up and all our, like, my shoes and socks and whatever, all chucked in the his closet. It wasn't even like neatly folded or anything, just all like 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 it got picked up in a great big armful, right? Of like, what to say, laundry or something, and then just like got thrown into the closet with the door shut even. It was so bizarre, but we could never figure this out because we knew it wasn't his parents. Because let's be honest, Bruce, like, if the parents would have seen the mess, what are parents known to do? Basically scold kids. That's exactly
Yeah.
what's gonna happen. That never happened.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think most people, when you get talking to them about stuff like this, most people have had some kind of experience that they can't explain, or they know somebody who did. It's a lot more common than people realize, because a lot of people won't talk about this stuff. They're afraid they're going to get made fun of or whatever.
Right.
And that's certainly been the case here in Kinderhook with the Kinderhook Creature and so on. There have been a lot of people who just wouldn't talk about it until you really delved into their past, and they said, yeah, well, maybe I did have an experience like that,
Yep.
Yeah, so I think it's the paranormal or cryptozoology, or the two of them together, I think, are just common human experiences. But
Mm-hmm.
these days, most people are taught not to talk about it.
Right. Well, I think we can kind of blame some of the past events, and I'm not just saying specifically for Bigfoot related, but I mean, let's take a look at we can always go back to like Roswell of 1947, where people were basically threatened, like, if you talk about this, we're gonna get rid of you, per se, or your
Well,
family.
yeah, there is
So
that.
yeah, and
That's true.
so maybe as time went on from that, maybe people kind of were just like, well, if we start talking, we might disappear, per se. I mean, it's quieted down now because I think the noise of the internet helped for
Yeah,
sure, and I think I don't really know a good way to put this besides, I mean, they can't get all of us, per se.
yeah,
I don't really know any other way to put that, but once something becomes popular and in pop culture now, it's kind of hard to stop it.
yeah, that's true. Well, also, I think over the years, people were taught that, hey, we have to trust in science, and this stuff is not scientific. Well, that to me is a very unscientific attitude.
Yes.
Just to say that it's all hogwash because you can't explain it, that's not scientific. I mean, science, real science, should pique your curiosity, and you should follow it wherever it leads. And if it leads to something that nobody's ever believed in before, then so be it. And that's the truth.
Yes.
Um, but a lot of scientists don't think that way. I think they're too stuck in their own dogma. Um, so I try to approach these things from a scientific viewpoint. That's why I say I have no particular theories on what a lot of these things are. Like, I don't know what the blob is. I can't explain it. I don't know if it's a spirit. I don't know if it's some kind of interdimensional thing. All I know is that I experienced it, and it's the same with UFOs and everything else. We saw these 4 or 5 reddish orange balls of light that zipped around and did impossible things, like stop dead in the sky and then did 180-degree turns, and then came together in a cluster and then separated. There was nothing like that in the air in the early 70s. There was nothing that we had that could do anything remotely related to that. So whatever that was, it was not one of our aircraft. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So,
whatever the Kinderhook Creature is, I don't know either. The experiences we had with that were pretty strange.
mhm.
But I certainly had the impression it was a physical, biological creature as opposed to a spirit entity or something. I mean, I don't know. There are so many variables here. People have claimed that there's a connection between Bigfoot and UFOs. I don't know. It's possible. But again, I have no particular theories. I just know what we experienced here.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you brought that up anyway, because this will kind of go good with a question I was just about to ask anyway. So you were talking the early 1970s, if I remember correctly, and for Pennsylvania, around, what would that be? Plattsburgh, maybe? I'm trying to remember. I just started watching that documentary last night. Anyway, it's about like the Chestnut Ridge area, and Stan Gordon brought up 1972, I believe. It was like this weird era of sightings of like UFOs,
Yeah,
Bigfoot, everything. And one particular thing, which is probably why a lot of people think Bigfoot, UFOs are together, is because Stan Gordon, in this documentary, and I think his book that he did, Silent Invasion, I think it's called. He goes
yeah,
into these sightings, encounters from people about there's a Bigfoot and a UFO being seen at the same time. And then there's
yeah,
one where it gets really bizarre, where like these people are seeing these Bigfoot with almost like holding like a ball of light,
yeah.
and it's like it go how did he describe it? Like the ball of light like got released from their hand, and
Mhm.
it shot up or something and went in the same or yeah, went into the same direction as the Bigfoot, or vice versa. Like this light went into the wood where this Bigfoot just ran, or
Yeah.
it's anyway. What I'm trying to get is this is all weird at the same time, but it almost sounds like these UFO sightings that you saw with your grandma is like around that same time
Well, it
period,
was, yeah, the best of my recollection, it was 1974. Um,
1974.
but yeah, that was about a year after the big UFO flap. I think 73 was a big year for UFOs. That was the year of the Pascagoula abduction, and all kinds of stuff like that. This was well past that, but it was before the movies like Close Encounters and so on.
Right.
Um, but what we saw, you know, looked a lot like that little red ball in Close Encounters that kind of follows around the other objects. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Um, yeah, the movie hadn't been made yet, but it was very similar to what we saw. Um, that's the best way I could describe it. It was like balls of light,
Hmm.
but they seem to have an intelligence, almost like they're putting on a show for us. It's very weird, and
You
of
hear
course,
that a lot.
no sound, nothing like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, we've run the gamut here. We've had it's almost embarrassing. We've had all different kinds of experiences. Um, but the Kinderhook Creatures seemed to be kind of the capper when that started happening in late '70s, early '80s. That was a pretty amazing time. And I did see something, or did experience something, that was similar to what you're talking about with the Bigfoot related to UFOs. I was, back in the early '80s, the Kinderhook Creature was the common talk around these parts,
Yep.
and it was seen by a lot of people. My grandmother, of course, was one of the main witnesses. Um, so I was kind of on the lookout for it. I was, obsessed, I guess you could say, with because I never got a look at it. I heard it once, and what I heard was blood curdling. But so I decided one night in 1982 I was going to stop at this place we call Bigfoot Bridge, which was where a hunter had found tracks in the soil near a creek bed. And we had made plaster casts of those tracks. And so it seemed to be like a prime spot to look for the creature. So I decided to go there one night on a whim. I didn't have anything with me. I didn't have a camera. I didn't have a tape recorder, nothing. I just wanted to go and stop there and see if I experienced anything. So I turned the car off and I turned the lights off and I just sat there in the dark for a while on the bridge. And, nothing happened. It was quiet. And I was just about to turn the car back on and leave when I heard in the trees across the road a sound that I could only describe as like big monkeys talking to each other is what it sounded like. Like they were having a conversation.
Oh, like and the what do they call
like the Alan Berry tapes?
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. And I was stunned. I wanted to get out of the car, but my legs wouldn't cooperate because I was all alone and kind of scared. But I finally got up the nerve to get out of the car and walk across the road. And of course, when I did that, the noises all stopped. But the odd thing that happened after that was that when the noises stopped, there was a white light that came up out of the woods. And it went straight up in the air and just vanished. Like it popped, like it just disappeared. And didn't make a sound, just this white light. So what the connection was there, I have no idea, but it was pretty weird.
Just to clarify, so this light came after you, I'm sorry, you heard, but basically it came after you heard it, right? Because you didn't really see anything?
No, I didn't see any creatures.
Right.
And the noises stopped. Yeah. The noises stopped, and then the light went up in the air.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, in this case, from what you can hear from other people encountered, where they say they'll see it per se, and I'm only doing quotation because I mean in this case you didn't see it, you just only heard it, but and then then all of a sudden these balls of light appear, or sometimes you hear they see these balls of light and then they have the encounter, or and then vice versa. Sometimes they don't even get that, which is odd enough. So like that, who knows what is really going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I tend to think too that UFOs may not be what we think they are. Do you read much of Jacques Vallée?
Sounds ring the bell.
Yeah, Jacques Vallée is he's a real pioneer in UFO research. He's been writing about UFOs for probably close to 60 years. He's in his 80s now. French researcher. Actually, the French character in Close Encounters is based on him.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. So Jacques Vallée's theory is that the UFOs that we see are not necessarily aliens. They're not necessarily from another planet. They're too strange for that. He thinks that there's some sort of interdimensional entities or something, just something that we don't understand. And I tend to agree with that theory. I think it makes more sense in a lot of ways because some UFO sightings and experiences with close encounters are so bizarre and so strange that I don't think they can be explained in any normal, rational way, even as aliens. I think it's something that we just don't understand. Another reality that infringes on our own. And nowadays, there's a lot of talk about USOs, coming up from the ocean.
Yeah,
And,
what do they call that? The unidentified, no. Yeah.
well, USOs, yeah.
Yeah,
Submerged objects.
submerged. Yeah, submerged. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, Bruce, like, I know I kind of said this before, like, if you're familiar with Vermont, but you must know, like, where Lake Champlain is and stuff like that.
Oh,
Have you heard of any theory that Lake Champlain might have like a secret UFO base or something, or something to that effect of like UFOs going in and out of the Lake Champlain? I'm just curious.
Well, not specifically, although I worked with Joe Zarzinski. I don't know if you know that name, but he was the first person to scientifically investigate the Lake Champlain monster, or Champ. I used to go up to Lake Champlain with him several summers in a row, and we would go out on a boat and look for Champ.
Oh wait, he wrote a book, right?
He wrote a book called Champ Beyond the Legend.
Oh yes, I do have that book. Forgive me. Yes, I do know who you mean then.
So, but yeah, Lake Champlain certainly has a lot of what you might call high strangeness going on up there.
Yes.
There have been a lot of UFO sightings in the area, and there have been all kinds of paranormal things as well as cryptozoological things up there. So, I mean, who knows? I think that, there's probably a lot of things under the ocean and under the, big lakes and rivers that we just don't know about. Now, whether they have anything to do with UFOs, I don't know, but I'd love to find out.
Well, I will agree with you about that, because I mean, the ocean would be the best spot to hide, as us humanity. Cat. I've been waiting for that to happen. Anyway,
did he knock something over? That's what they do.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. How did I know that?
Oh God. Anyway, where would I go on with this? Oh boy. Ocean. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. So the ocean would be amazing to hide anyway, because us as a whole, as humanity, we can't even get as deep as they probably are, quote, hidden, because, and I'm just, again, I mean, quote, as in, like, who knows? I mean, they could be so far down in the ocean, because the ocean, what was it, like 5% explored? I forget. It's a very small percentage.
Very small percentage. We actually know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the bottom of the ocean.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Yep. So that should say something.
It should. Yes.
But yeah, I completely agree with that theory. Another cool theory, I don't know if you looked into it though, Bruce. It's a book. It's an old book. It's called The Goblin Universe. It's by Ted Holiday.
Yep.
I like the idea, and you can share your thoughts on it too. But he had the idea that we're basically all manifesting the phenomena, and I'm just saying that as in a nutshell, basically. But that's basically what this Goblin universe is. Do you feel that way? Like us humans are actually manifesting everything?
Well, that's pretty close to what Jacques Vallée believes. He thinks that we have something to do with what we see, that our perceptions color whatever it is that we see. Which brings me back to my cousin seeing the Virgin Mary. That we bring our own reality to whatever it is that is coming from somewhere else. That there are these things that are interdimensional, perhaps, that are from some alternate reality, and we know, theoretically, science knows that there are probably many more dimensions than we realize. And, why couldn't those things come to our dimension? We're on the verge of being able to break through into other dimensions with things like the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, the atom smasher, which, is going way out there to the edge of our own reality. So maybe someday we'll be able to break through to the other dimensions. Who knows?
That's true. I mean, if we can create our own black hole, why not, right?
Which kind of scares me because, if we create our own black hole, we can destroy the universe. That'd be a bad day.
Right. Well, I mean, was it China? Yeah, China. I think it was that created the first quote black hole, man-made black hole. I think it was. It was.
Yeah.
I don't think it was really that well known or that well talked about. But then again, I probably wouldn't want that to be global news anyway. As you kind of say, like,
No,
oh god,
and it was microscopic, basically,
yes,
but it's still kind of scary that they could do that. So
yeah.
I'm not sure I'm in favor of that.
Well, that's like nowadays with AI, man. I mean, are we about to be witnessing Terminator in real life? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that kind of scares me too. But
I'm right there with you, Bruce. I guess real quick before I want to wrap it up because I don't want to take much more of your time, but I want to go back to your grandma for a minute because I wanted this to be the second part of after I had asked you like how old you were when she had passed. But the other reason why I was also thinking about it, you guys kind of chit chatted, and then now that she did pass, they say when it comes to poltergeist activities, for shortness here, is it can either be the house or a person. And what's interesting about this is, and I don't know if you thought about this even after she had passed, but do you feel like your grandma would maybe almost like the battery, maybe? Or maybe as like you were kind of saying earlier, when you two were together, there was a
Yeah,
lot going on.
yeah, that we could be the catalyst. Has occurred to me, and it would explain why things quieted down after she passed away.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean it's an interesting theory. Again, I can't prove any of this, but it certainly occurred to me that that's possible. And
Okay.
and before we do go, I just wanted to mention one of the strangest things that ever happened to me that still haunts me to this day. And that's the man digging, which I've told this story many times.
Thank you for
It's
bringing this up because
Yeah,
this is the story where I had that question for you anyway. So yeah,
yeah.
please feel free to share.
It was just so odd. And this was around the same time that we saw those UFOs. It was early 70s. And I was out walking one fine spring day in what we call the back 40 of this property, which is there's kind of a field that opens up and then it edges into the woods.
Hmm.
And I saw this guy with his back to me. He was wearing a green shirt and green pants. He was short in stature. He's about maybe 5 feet tall. And he was digging in the ground with a little shovel. And I thought that's pretty strange because people don't normally trespass on our property. So I called out to the guy and he ignored me. He just kept digging. And I called out to him a couple more times and he just acted like he didn't hear me. So I thought, well, this is pretty weird. And at the time, my grandmother was still here and she owned the property. And so I went back to get her and I said, there's this guy out there digging in the field. And I said, what's that? Come out and see him. Let's see what's going on here. So she came out with me and we both saw the guy. He still had his back to us. He wouldn't look at us. We both called out to him. No response. Then finally, one time when we called out to him, he sort of half turned around. And even though it was a bright, sunny day, you couldn't see any features on his face. It was like blank. And then he just went back to his digging. Okay. And then the next thing I remember, we were back in the house, sitting at the dining room table. And we kind of looked at each other and said, why did we come back here? He's still out there. And, we went out again. Well, he wasn't out there. He was gone. And there was no spot we could find where anybody had been digging. So to me, that is just one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me. I mean, it's like he was wearing green. Was he a fairy? Was he a leprechaun? Was he digging for gold? But
Yeah.
the weirdest part to me was that we were back in the house all of a sudden. I never remembered coming back to the house. We just all of a sudden we were there. And I had the impression that we had seen something we were not meant to see. And I still think about it to this day. It's so strange.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the parts in your documentary, which I don't know if that's in your book, but I just know it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the question that I was waiting to hear maybe Seth ask you, because I think Seth was interviewing you at that point. But it sounds like nobody asked you, so I just want to ask you here. So after this incident, did you or your grandma or both of you ever think of like going to where you saw him dig to maybe see if you could find something?
Yeah, actually, yes, I did. I mean, I don't recall if I actually dug there, but I know that for many years, I was trying to remember exactly where that spot was. But now, it's like the area has been kind of dug up and sort of redone. So I don't really have a clue where it is. Hey, I've often thought, gee, maybe I'd find gold. But nah, I don't know. But that's the other thing that's kind of strange about it, is that I didn't think about doing that, like digging it up, until years later. It's almost like there's something in your head that says, no, just don't think about this. Just forget it. You know what I mean?
Oh, like a suppression in a way.
Yeah. That's why I felt that I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which also sounds like an alien thing. I mean, I don't know. It's like there's missing time because I don't remember coming back to the house. So it's just so bizarre to me.
Yeah, and I want to clarify that real quick, Bruce. When you say you were back in the house, it was almost like, you closed your eyes and as you opened them again, you basically went from being outside right back inside.
Well, that's the way I remember it. I mean, I just don't remember coming back to the house.
Right.
And I don't know why we would have.
Right.
What was the incentive to come back to the house? This guy was still digging in our yard.
On your lawn. Yeah.
Yeah. So it didn't make any sense to me, and it still doesn't.
Bruce, I mean, that's the $1 in a million question, right? I mean, maybe you did see a leprechaun. I mean, there's got to be.
Well, again, Jacques Vallée likes to theorize about the fact that the little people that have been seen for thousands of years are the same phenomenon as the aliens. Whatever that phenomenon is. So, who knows? I don't know.
I don't know. You got the documentary that is coming out from Small Town, and you got your book out. That's what I wanted to. I guess that's another way I could ask you. Is there anything maybe in the book that differs from the documentary? Like, is there something in the book that we didn't get a chance to touch on that isn't even present in the documentary?
I think Seth did a really good job of encapsulating the book in the documentary. He, of course, he published the book and he's very familiar with it, and he, the questions that he had for me during filming were based on various chapters in the book. So, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that he left out. The documentary is only, I think, about 72 minutes long, but it seemed to include all the high points that I recall. There may have been one or two, minor things left out, but boy, I was just so impressed with the film. It's just so well done, and I got kind of emotional just watching it, because it kind of covers my whole life in a way.
Right. Yeah, that's why I was saying at the beginning, like, I could feel the emotion, man. Like, it's all there. It was like raw. Like, even that moment when I like I said, I really don't wanna like have you like feel like you wanna tear up right now, but even that moment where you had to take a second from like to stop recording with Seth, like right then and there, I just knew like that's how much your grandmother meant to you. Because for those listening, I'll just say it for the record here. So basically, in short, Bruce's grandmother was basically like a second mom, really. Like she was the mom that Bruce had grown up, because your family was pretty much working day and night, but vice versa, basically, from what I remember. But not just that, but I think one of the best things I remember about the documentary right now about your grandmother is how she taught you to read. That is the best thing ever with your comic book.
Yeah,
so that's amazing.
Right. Yeah, I was like 3 years old, and she taught me how to read. Yeah.
Do you remember real quick what that comic book was?
Well, I remember several comic books from when I was very, very young. One was called Turok, Son of Stone, and it was about Indians, American Indians fighting dinosaurs.
Yep.
And that's one of the earliest ones I remember. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yep.
You remember that too, huh?
Yep. Yep. I remember playing the games of Turok and stuff like that. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, the great thing about this documentary to me is that it's a wonderful tribute to my grandmother.
Yes.
And whenever I do talks, which I do quite often at libraries and various places, I always bring the DVD of the PM magazine interview that she did back in 1981, where she talks about, she was sitting in the house waiting for the creature to look in, and she had a hammer, and she was, she was going to hammer it if she had to. It always gets a chuckle from the audience. And my grandmother always steals the show. She still steals the show, even though she's not here.
Then that's probably why your grandmother is still around, because you're still able to talk to her, or you'll be able to still share her story, and people are still being able to, I don't want to say reconcile it, because that sounds wrong, but it's like they're taking that part with them, because I think that's the other part that I loved about the documentary, is that like, how does she word it? Like I had the hammer in my hand, and I probably would have fainted if it walked through the window.
Yeah. But years later, after that, she used to say that she missed it. She wished it was still around, because it made life so exciting.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah. With that all real quick, Bruce, and again, I just don't want to take too much more, but because you've already, donated enough time too. But she was also part of that time where like there was like a noise outside, and somebody came with like a shotgun or something.
Right. Yeah. Well, that was the the big incident that kind of started the whole thing. Yeah, she was being brought home by my Aunt Barbara, her daughter, from her house. And just as she was getting out of the car, she heard this awful sound. She described it as like someone in horrible agony, just moaning and groaning and howling and all kinds of things. And it was a very full moon night, a really bright full moon. And she said they could see a shadow of something around the shed that had very long arms and kind of a pointed head almost. And that's when my Aunt Barbara decided to go get her son Barry, who came over with a shotgun. And he stood on the porch and fired up into the air. And there was dead silence. And then he fired again, and the thing screamed, and it ran off. And that was the incident that my mother actually wrote a letter to the local newspaper, the Albany Times-Union, and it was published there. And that's when people started coming out of the woodwork saying, yeah, we've experienced things like that. We've heard these things and seen these things. And that really started the whole ball rolling. Yeah.
Yeah.
But before that, it was a couple of months before that, I had a friend visiting from England, and she was at our house, at my grandparents' house, I should say, and I was going to escort her home to where she was staying. And just as we went out onto the back porch, the security light came on, and I heard this ungodly noise coming from the woods. It started out like a howl or a scream, and then went into a series of guttural sounds, and then it kind of died out in a low moan. And my English friend said to me, "Is that a typical American sound to hear at night?" And I said, "No." I said, "I've never heard that before in my life." And it was dark. I was not going to go down there and investigate that noise, because that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. That was a blood-curdling sound. And it was only a couple months later that the creature reappeared and got shot at. So, yeah. Those were the days.
Wow. Well, as your grandma put it, I wish you weren't bored.
No, we certainly weren't. It was exciting.
Well, Bruce, I mean, I enjoyed your little chat here. I feel like we really didn't really get to maybe delve into a lot of things here, especially like the Kinderhook Creature a little bit with some of the stuff there, but I feel like the documentary does justice really more, and I don't want to give too much away of that too, but I will flat out agree with you though that the documentary is beautifully done for your grandmother, and even for your parents that were featured in it. I mean, everything about it would smooth, it was like a smooth sail, really, with everything, just how everything came together.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you feel that way, because that's, to me, it's just it's a wonderful piece of work, and I couldn't imagine it being any better.
Exactly. It's a piece of art. It's why I say it's one of my probably top favorites now from them, just because of the emotional drama aspects and mixed in with the paranormal, as you kind of, I think, said it earlier. But I mean, it just flows so well, and then at the end of it, it's just like Jesus, like like all the emotions and stuff. It's just it was definitely a wild ride at the end, and then when the credit finally hit, it was just like, oh, I can breathe. You know what I mean? Like wow, like after all that, it's just like I could finally take a breath. And just let it all soak in. But anyway, real quick, Bruce, I guess, I will send a plug in here, which is your book, The Kinderhook Creature and Beyond. And, it's available. Smalltownmonster.com has it. Amazon has it. Probably wherever you can get your book, if I had to guess. You said you do talks, so Yeah, I mean, I don't know how often you do chit chat, but is there a way to keep up with maybe like your public chats at all?
Um, well, you mean on Facebook or?
Yeah, like in general,
Yeah.
like do you have a place that you would like to plug, I guess, to keep up with your public appearances?
Oh, well, no particular place, but I'd be happy to come back here again anytime.
Yeah, Bruce, I would love to chat with you more. You have a lot of stories, and I feel like I just said, we just barely just scratched the surface, really. But
Yeah.
it was definitely fun to even try to compare some of my strangeness that I've seen to your stuff because it's just kind of cool and interesting to hear maybe the different I don't even want to say opinion, but different things that happen. Good, like the red light. I've seen something weird and similar in a building. So I mean, and I
Yeah.
was outside, and you were outside. I was
Yeah.
spooked. You were spooked.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always fascinated to hear other people's stories. That's one of the things I do at my talks is I ask people to tell me what they've experienced, and sometimes I get some really, really good stories.
That's awesome. Well, Bruce, yeah, I would be honored to have you back on when you would like to share something or when you just want to just chit chat. I'm always here for you, man. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And for everybody else, you know the drill. Keep your eyes open because you just never know what is going to stumble upon you. In this case, with Bruce the Chat and I look up to the sky, you might see mysterious lights that dance for you. Look out for mysterious sounds in the wilderness. If you hear something groaning, make sure you have a shotgun, I guess, because that's what happens with country boys. We just go and shoot stuff and then ask questions later. Until next time.